Okay. Can I get appearances, please, starting with the government?
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Josiah Jones, and along with my co-counsel, Ms. Tristan Slack, we represent the United States.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Abby Davis, and today I am joined by my co-counsel, Jay Anderson.
Morning, Your Honor.
Good afternoon.
Today, we represent the defendant, Ms. Kara Bassett.
Thank you very much. Are there any housekeeping matters from the government before we get started?
Yes, Your Honor. I would just like to draw the court's attention specifically to stipulations 6 and 7. Those read, once exhibits are admitted, counsel performing an opening, examination, or closing may display such exhibits on screen at any time without specifically requesting permission. And then exhibit 7, exhibits 4 through 33 are pre-admitted and may be used at any time for any.
Those are part of the pretrial order?
Yes, Your Honor, the stipulations.
Those sound like very wise pretrial decisions by the judge. Ms. Davis, anything else?
No, Your Honor, the defense is ready to proceed.
Fantastic. Mr.
One
Jones,
more thing, Your Honor, sorry.
Go ahead.
We would like to invoke rules 603 and 615 that witnesses are constructively sequestered and that they need not be sworn in.
That
Be
motion is
constructively
granted.
sworn in before testifying, sorry.
That motion is granted.
With that, we're ready to proceed with opening statement.
Great. I'll encourage all judges to turn on speaker view at this time, so we're just hearing the attorney who's performing. You may proceed.
Choices. 6 p.m. It's 9 p.m. August 18th. Kara Bassett is about to choose between her husband and passion. She waits until her husband is unsuspecting, and then she injects him with a lethal drug, killing him. She drags his lifeless body to their van and drives. After disposing of the body, she hikes back home carrying a piece of evidence that will prove that in the end, there's really no choice at all. Because there's no choice, the United States has charged the defendant with murder. We have to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant killed Don Clark and did so with malice aforethought. We will prove that with the dirt, drugs, and the demeanor. First, the dirt. Members of the jury, you're going to learn that Kara Bassett hiked home with these boots. On the bottom of those boots, there is residue from the Big Gum Swamp where she dumped Don Clark's body. Not only was this residue on the bottom of her boots, it was on the driver's side pedal of the van that she drove to and from the swamp. Secondly, the drug. You're going to learn that the defendant had access to carfentanil. Carfentanil is an elephant tranquilizer that is exceptionally dangerous when ingested by humans. Only 1 milligram is needed to kill an adult human. You're going to learn that when the FBI investigated the medical cabinet on the defendant's property, there was 1 syringe missing and unaccounted for, and the defendant was the last person to access the carfentanil. Finally, demeanor. You're going to learn that the defendant had an obsessive passion with elephants. You're going to hear her say that nothing is more important than these elephants. She's going to smile when she's telling you how hard it is for her to move on. Members of the jury, what you're going to learn is that after Don Clark disappeared, she didn't call her husband, she didn't text her husband, she didn't even report the fact that he was missing until an entire week had passed. No, instead she kept filming her documentary. As soon as she could, she turned that elephant park into her dream sanctuary. She made a choice. Members of the jury, the dirt, the drugs, and the demeanor will prove to you that in the end, There was no choice at all. Find Kara Bassett guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Ms. Davis?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes.
Have you ever thought about just leaving in the middle of the night? No goodbyes, no see you laters, just up and leaving in the middle of the night. That's what Don Clark said to his employee, Kelsey Stebbins, just before he disappeared in the middle of the night with no goodbyes on August 18th of 2017. Today, you will hear about how Don Clark made frequent visits to Costa Rica, purchased a home there, and had a 52-minute conversation with a phone number from Costa Rica just hours before his disappearance. The FBI, they never set a single foot in Costa Rica throughout this entire investigation. The prosecution's case today is like a bad apple. It looks glossy, smooth on the outside, but when you bite into it, when you go below the surface, you find it's rotten and mushy, full of brown spots and maybe even a worm or two. That's exactly what you're going to see today. On the outside, their case seems simple enough. A wife chooses herself over her husband. She makes a selfish decision, but that's just the surface level. When we go deeper, we will see suspects left uninvestigated, witnesses left uninterviewed, and leads left unfollowed. And the worm in the state's case, they don't have a body. They can't prove to you that their alleged victim is even dead. Meanwhile, Kara Bassett's story lines up with all of the evidence. You will hear that she told the FBI that she was at the Greater Tallahassee Elephant Park all night on August 18th. And that's exactly what the GPS data shows. She told the FBI that she couldn't find Don's wallet and keys, and that's what they found. They couldn't find the wallet and keys. She told the FBI that she received a message from her husband saying that he was going out for a while. That's what the FBI found. She cooperated with the whole investigation, and her story never changed. You will also hear from Joe Young today. Joe Young spent years filming at the Greater Tallahassee Elephant Park. She'll show you a video of a park employee with relevant information to this case. In fact, she has 2,000 hours of footage, but you'll hear that the FBI never asked for any of it. You'll hear that Ms. Young made a trip to Costa Rica to try to find Don Clark. She found evidence that he could still be alive. The FBI never even asked her about it. You'll also hear from lead FBI agent Steph Branham. Agent Branham will have to tell you that the FBI didn't receive alibis from many suspects in this case, including Lisa Clark, Don Clark's ex-wife. Agent Branham will tell you that the only statement Lisa Clark made to him when he tried to ask her about Don Clark was that blank deserved to die. He still doesn't have an alibi for her. You'll hear that the FBI never tracked down the unknown number that was calling Don Clark from Costa Rica for 52 minutes just before he disappeared. You'll hear that the FBI never went to Costa Rica, never canvassed the surrounding areas, never even checked Don Clark's vacation home. The prosecution's going to try to gloss over all this to get you to focus on their easy narrative. Don't be fooled. Thank you.
Great. Judges, let's go back to gallery view so you can see all of the participants at the same time. Government, are you prepared to call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
The government calls Agent Branham to the stand.
Okay, Agent Branham, you are under oath. You may proceed, Mr. Jones.
Good afternoon, Agent.
Good afternoon.
Could you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Good afternoon. My name is Steph Branham.
What do you do for a living?
I'm an agent with the FBI.
How long have you been an agent with the FBI?
Ever since 2002, so 18 years.
Did you have any specific training in the area of criminal investigation?
Yes, I served a 20-week course at Quantico in 2002, and I've done annual training ever since.
Agent, I want to jump right into it. August 25th, 2017, did you begin investigating the disappearance of a man named Don Clark?
I did.
Did your investigation ever lead you to the defendant, Kara Bassett?
It did.
What did the defendant tell you about the night of August 18th?
She told me that her husband had gone missing, that she had last seen him at 9 o'clock.
Did you find any reason in your investigation to doubt the story that she last saw him at 9 o'clock?
Yes, I did. Specifically, a set of GPS records.
I want to show you what's been previously admitted as Exhibit 31. Agent, do you recognize that?
Yes, it's a portion of those GPS records.
Where did that van go?
It went to a place called Big Gum Swamp.
How long did the van stay at Big Gum Swamp?
About half an hour.
Afterwards, where did the van travel?
It went back to Tallahassee, Florida, to a place called Carrie Bell Leone Airport.
Did your investigation allow you to conduct forensic testing on the van?
It did. We ran forensic tests on the whole van.
What forensic evidence did you find tying Don Clark to the van?
We found 6 hairs on the floor of the back of the van that belonged to Don Clark.
Agent, I'm showing you what's been previously admitted as Exhibit 5. Is that the excerpt of your report you were just referring to?
It is.
I want to show you what's been previously admitted as Exhibit 29. Agent, did your forensic investigation of the Chevrolet van lead you to Kara Bassett at all?
It did. We found some dirt on the pedals in the front of the van, and we traced algae in that dirt back to a pair of the defendant's boots.
I want to be very clear here, Agent. Other than fingerprints, did you find any forensic evidence tying Don Clark to the front of the van?
No, we did not.
I want to show you what's been previously admitted as Exhibit 5, a different excerpt from your forensics report. Do you recognize that?
I did.
Based on your forensic investigation, was it common to see this specific dirt mixture in one space?
No, it was not. It was a very rare type of algae found in the dirt. It was found only at the swamp.
Agent, I want to turn your attention to the search of the elephant park. Do you recall searching the elephant park?
I do.
Agent, did your search of the elephant park lead you to a possible murder weapon?
It did. We found that the park owned syringes of a dangerous drug called carfentanil.
Showing you what's been previously admitted as Exhibits 17 and 18. Agent, do you recognize those?
I do. 18 is a syringe of that drug, and 17 is the safety sheet for that drug.
How dangerous is carfentanil when ingested by humans?
Very. It's fatal if 1 milligram or more is swallowed, and it is 5,000 times more toxic than heroin.
Did you ever become aware of any sort of log that was kept on the property of carfentanil?
They logged everyone who had access to that drug.
I'm going to show you what's been previously admitted as Exhibit 19. You recognize that, Agent?
I do. This is that log.
It says on August 1st, 2017, the last syringe that was checked out was initialed by a person named CC. In your investigation, were you able to determine who was CC?
That was Kara Clark, who is now Kara Bassett.
Agent, it indicates there that 24 syringes were supposed to be left in the medical cabinet. Is that what you found when the FBI investigated the medical cabinet?
No, it is not. We only found 23.
I want to turn your attention to what's been previously admitted as Exhibit 22. Agent, give him 1 second, Agent. Sorry about that. I'm going to show you what's been previously admitted as the phone records. Do you recognize those?
I do. These are Kara Bassett's phone records.
Agent, from what you see, did Kara Bassett ever call Don Clark after August 18th?
No, she did not.
Did Kara Bassett ever text Don Clark after August 18th?
No, she did not.
What did she tell you she was doing during that week from the 18th to the 25th?
She told us that she was looking for her husband, that she drove around trying to find him, but this call log indicated otherwise.
I also see some GPS records at the top portion there. Are those GPS records consistent with her story that she was driving around the city?
No, they are not. These call records say that she stayed at the park for a full week, which would indicate that she was not driving around.
Agent, I want to turn your attention to Don Clark's financial standing at the time of his disappearance. Were you aware of any financial agreement between Don Clark and Kara Bassett?
I was. In May, they had signed a power of attorney document.
Agent, could you briefly explain to the members of the jury, what is a power of attorney document?
Power of attorney document says that if Don Clark were to die or disappear, Kara Clark would get all of his assets.
Well, how soon did Kara Clark execute power of attorney over Don Clark?
Just 2 months after he disappeared, on October 1st, she took over the park.
Well, what do you mean when you say took over?
She changed the park from a zoo to a sanctuary.
Agent, were you able to interview Kara Bassett during your investigation?
I was.
Did she tell you during that interview the main reason why they fought?
She did. She told me that the two had fought because she wanted the park to be a sanctuary and her husband wanted it to be a business.
Agent, finally, Agent, throughout your investigation, what was the result of your investigation?
The result of my investigation was that I arrested Kara Bassett for the murder of Don Clark.
Did you find any evidence throughout your investigation that Don Clark just picked up and left?
No, I did not. We didn't see any reason for him to do so.
Any evidence that Don Clark went to Costa Rica?
No, sir. We actually found his plane, and it was still in Florida.
Thank you, Agent. Your Honor, nothing further at this time.
Ms. Davis, you can proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Agent Branham. I'd like to talk about what you just finished saying to Mr. Jones. Now, you said that you found Don Clark's plane in his hangar.
I did.
And this was the week of August 25th, isn't that right?
It was. We began our investigation and looked for that plane.
You have no idea where the plane was on August 18th, do you?
I do not. I just know where it was when I found it.
You also testified that you found nothing to suggest that Don Clark would have gone to Costa Rica. Well, I'm showing you Exhibit 4. This is a letter that you received from Don Clark's lawyer, isn't it?
It's not appearing on the screen, but I do know that Exhibit 4 is that letter.
Sorry, Mr. Anderson, can we have Exhibit 4 up on the screen? Oh, this is a letter. Do you have it pulled up in front of you?
I can pull it up. Or you're on the screen now.
There we go. Perfect. All right. I'd like to focus in on the paragraph about Costa Rica. Could we have a closer look at that, Mr. Anderson? Well, Mandy Tuminelli told you that Don Clark wanted to invest money in Costa Rica, correct?
He did say he was looking for some properties.
He wanted to do this with cash that was off the books. Isn't that how it was put?
That's how it was said.
Let's talk about the phone logs that you brought up. Can we have Exhibit 21 up on the screen? These are Don Clark's phone logs, isn't that right?
They are.
All right, well, I'm showing you text 7 and 8. Now, these are from an unknown number in Costa Rica, isn't that right?
They are.
When you translated them, they came out to call me immediately.
They did.
And these were received on August 18th of 2017?
They were.
Can we have a look at call number 4 from the same log, Mr. Anderson? This call was from the same number, correct?
Correct.
It lasted 52 minutes, isn't that right?
It did.
And it was from the evening that Don Clark disappeared.
It was.
Thank you. Let's talk about your investigation. Even though you had these calls and a letter from Mandy Tuminelli, you never went to Costa Rica, did you?
No, we did not.
You never visited Don Clark's vacation home?
No, we did not. We talked to police there, and they said he wasn't there.
But you never personally went there to see if anyone recognized a picture?
No, I did not.
Let's talk about your theory about the swamp. You took sniffer dogs to investigate that swamp, didn't you?
I did.
You gave them Don Clark's scent?
We didn't.
They didn't find anything. Isn't that right?
No, ma'am. That is typical in places with lots of water.
Thank you. Let's talk about Exhibit 5, the forensics report. I'm going to put up paragraph 3 from the 3rd page. This states that you didn't test any mud from the Greater Tallahassee Elephant Park. Isn't that right?
No, ma'am. We found no algae to test, so we couldn't run any.
It also states here that these materials, the algae and such, they can be transferred by contact. Isn't that right?
They could, but we couldn't find any algae at the park, so we couldn't run any tests.
Well, you never collected any algae samples from the park. Isn't that right?
There was no
Question,
algae.
ask and answer.
Your Honor, I'm just clarifying.
I'm sorry, what was your objection, Mr. Jones?
Ask and answer.
Overruled.
You never took any samples from the park, did you?
There was no algae to collect, so no.
It says you did not test any samples against any natural substances like dirt or watering holes at the Tallahassee Elephant Park.
That's correct. We couldn't find any algae to take samples of, so we couldn't run any tests on samples.
Well, let's talk about the alibis in this case. Now, you never received an alibi from Phil Clark, did you?
No, we did not.
He's Don Clark's son, right?
Yes.
You never received an alibi from Nate Garson, did you?
No, we did not.
Nate Garson had access to that carfentanil that you talked about so much on direct. Isn't that right?
According to the log, he did.
Now, you called Lisa Clark, Don Clark's ex-wife. Isn't that right?
That is her role.
When she refused to cooperate with your investigation, didn't she?
She did. She told us she wouldn't be interviewed.
I believe her exact words when you talked about Don Clark were, "That blank deserves to die." Isn't that right?
Objection on hearsay.
May I be heard?
Yes.
Your Honor, this is a hearsay exception under Rule 8033. It goes to show Lisa Clark's then existing mental, emotional state.
Mr. Jones?
Yes, Your Honor, I don't believe Lisa Clark saying Don Clark deserved to die, that mental state would be relevant in today's case.
For what purpose is this being offered, Ms. Davis?
This is being offered for two purposes. First of all, to offer one alternate theory that Lisa Clark could have had something to do with Mr. Clark's disappearance. Secondly, it's going to show that this witness on the stand here, that Agent Branham heard Lisa Clark making very hostile statements about the victim who had disappeared, and yet she never got an alibi from that witness.
So on point 1, you're saying it goes to motive?
Yes, it goes to motive and to thoroughness of investigation.
Yeah, the court doesn't view this as hearsay because it's not being offered for the truth. I don't think that the defense is trying to prove that in fact he deserved to die, but rather just that the declarant thought so and this witness should have followed up. I'll permit it for that purpose. Objections overruled.
So just to rephrase, Lisa Clark's exact words to you were, "That blank deserves to die."
That's what she said.
And you don't have an alibi for her on August 18th, do you?
No, I do not. She would not sit down for an interview.
Now, let's talk about what Kara told you in her interviews. Now, Kara cooperated with you through this entire investigation, isn't that right?
She did.
Her story stayed consistent across all of the different interviews?
Her story stayed consistent to itself, but not with the evidence.
Well, let's talk about that evidence. She told you that she was at the Greater Tallahassee Elephant Park the night Don Clark disappeared. Isn't that right?
She did tell us that.
That's what the GPS data shows.
Her phone records say she was there all week.
She told you that Don Clark's phone, wallet, and keys were missing. Isn't that right?
She did tell us that.
And when you searched the park, Don Clark's phone, wallet, and keys were missing. Isn't that right?
They were.
She told you that Don Clark had sent her a text message saying, "Going out for a while." Isn't that right?
She did, and this is that text.
You found it on the phone confirming her story. Isn't that right?
We did.
Finally, you couldn't determine a manner of death in this case, could you?
No, without the body, we couldn't run an autopsy, but we do believe he was killed with carfentanil.
So you believe he was killed with carfentanil. You never found carfentanil on Don Clark's body, did you?
No, we were unable to dredge the entire swamp, so we were unable to find the body.
Well, you never found Don Clark's scent at that swamp, though, did you?
That's right. The water was hard for the dogs to find a body.
You don't even know that the body exists.
I suppose we don't, ma'am.
Thank you. Nothing further at this time.
Mr. Jones, do you have any additional questions for this witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
You can proceed.
Agent, I'm showing you what's been previously admitted as Exhibit 4. Based on that portion of the text, was Don Clark ever actually able to work out those things in Costa Rica that he was arranging?
No, he was not. He disappeared before he was able to.
Opposing counsel brought up some alibis of other people in this case. Did you determine throughout your investigation that it was necessary for those people to have alibis?
No, we found no forensic evidence tying them to the crime.
Why did you decide that carfentanil poisoning was the method of death in today's case?
Well, there was a syringe of the drug missing, and so we figured that that was what had happened, given that and the other evidence.
And who was the last person to access the log?
That would be Kara Bassett.
Thank you, Agent. Your Honor, nothing further.
Ms. Davis, anything further with this witness?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, Agent. You are excused. Anything further from the government?
No, Your Honor, at this time, the United States rests.
Ms. Davis, would the defense like to call any witnesses in this case?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Joe Young to the stand.
Hello, Ms. Young. You are under oath. Ms. Davis, you can proceed.
Good afternoon. Would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Good afternoon, my name is Joe Young.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a TV producer. I mostly make reality shows and documentaries. I've won a couple Emmys. But what I like most about this job is not the money or the awards. I get to travel all across the country, meet all kinds of people. You see, I traveled to LA to film Keeping Up with the Kardashians. I'm a New Yorker. I'm supposed to hate New Jersey with my entire lifeblood, but I went there to film Jersey Shore. I love my job.
That's good to hear. Well, let's talk about today's case. Are you familiar with Miss Bassett?
Yes, of course. Kara and I know each other very well.
How did you meet?
In 2015, about 5 years ago, she called me because she knew my work was spectacular. She wanted me to film a documentary about her.
Did you agree to do so?
Yes, of course. I'm always looking for new opportunities. So I moved from my loft in New York all the way to Tallahassee, Florida.
How much time did this filming project take up?
3 years. I started in August of 2015 until she was arrested in September of 2018. 3 years.
Thank you. Do you know Don Clark?
Yes, of course. Don was Kara's husband, so we got to know each other very well as well.
Did you observe Mr. Clark and Miss Bassett interacting?
Yes, of course. I was at the park every day.
And how would you describe their relationship?
Well, they loved each other very much. You know, sometimes they would get into arguments, but at the end of the day, there was always love and respect between each other. I mean, Kara even called Don her gentle giant.
Thank you. I'd like to briefly address these arguments. Did there seem to be any common thread in them?
Well, yes. Sometimes they would argue about how the elephant park was run. One time, Kara might have thrown a vase at him, but she didn't mean to aim it at his head.
Oh,
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation as to she didn't mean to aim it at his head.
Sustained.
Motion to strike.
The latter portion of the answer will be stricken.
oh, did you ever see either of them physically harm each other?
No, not physically.
Let's talk about some other interactions you might have witnessed. Did you ever meet Lisa Clark?
Yes, I did. That was Dawn's first wife.
Are there any interactions with her that stand out?
Yes, there were. You know, in my business, we have this saying where we say someone is made for reality TV. I say this to very few people. I said it about Kim Kardashian, and I said it about Lisa Clark. She was always very theatrical.
Could you describe any interactions that showed this theatrical nature?
Yes, of course. One time she was arguing with Dawn and she said, "I'll wipe you off the face of the earth. You'll be sorry."
Thank you.
Your
Let's
Honor,
talk.
hearsay.
May I respond?
I'm sorry, what was the objection?
Hearsay.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor, this is again going to Lisa Clark's then existing emotional state, her motive. It would be an exception under Rule 8033.
I'm inclined to agree, but I'll give the government a last chance here.
I'll just ask for a limiting instruction that it not be considered for the truth of the matter asserted.
Well, if it's being offered as an exception, it is being offered for the truth.
Oh, excuse me, Your Honor, my mistake.
Okay, so
The
I'm
objection's
going to
withdrawn.
the objection. The answer will stand. Go ahead.
Now, did you ever, what was your last conversation with Don Clark?
Well, my last conversation with him was on August 18th, 2017.
How did that go?
Well, it was a normal day for me. It was around 6 p.m., which is usually when I leave and go home. I was just chatting to Don Clark like I usually do. But then he got a phone call. He looked down at his phone, his face went completely white, and he said, "I need to go deal with this."
And what time did you say this was again?
6 p.m., that's when I leave the park every day.
Mr. Anderson, could we have Exhibit 21 up on the screen? Could we zoom in on text 7 and 8? Oh, could you read the time on these text messages for us?
Of course, they both say August 18th, 2017, and they're both at 6 p.m.
Thank you. What happened after Don Clark saw his phone and went white?
He said, "I need to deal with this," and then he left.
Did you ever make an attempt to track down Don Clark after he disappeared?
Yes, I did. Almost a year after he disappeared, June 2018, I went to Costa Rica to look at his house.
Did you find anything to indicate that he could be living there?
Yes, I did. You see, I broke in through the window, very CSI Miami, and I looked around. I was expecting the place to be completely dirty, stuff everywhere. But the place was spotless. There was no dust. Dawn's clothes were even in the closet. It looked like someone had been living there.
Did you ask anyone around if they recognized him?
Yeah, I showed his picture to some locals, and some of them said they recognized him.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay as to the conversation with the locals.
Response?
Your Honor, there's not a truth statement being made in these. The locals are simply recognizing a picture of him. They're not making a truth value statement.
Aren't they saying that they do in fact recognize this person? Isn't that the same thing as saying, "I've seen this person before"?
Yes, that's true. However, this can also be conveyed like in the person's demeanor when they are shown the picture.
Okay. Mr. Jones?
Yes, Your Honor, the way the witness phrased it, it would be hearsay as she was talking to the locals and the locals told her that they recognized Don Clark.
May I respond?
Yes?
If it is not admissible for the truth of the matter asserted, then we would like to offer it to show that there was some evidence that could exist that Don Clark was still alive, but the FBI never investigated.
No, I don't think that's right. It seems like it's being offered for the truth. The only way this would be relevant to whether the FBI missed something is whether in fact this actually was said. I understand your argument, Ms. Davis, but I think even if it were offered even in part for that, the probative value is substantially outweighed by any danger of prejudice or confusion. So I'm going to sustain the objection as to hearsay, and we're going to strike that comment about the locals' alleged recognition of Mr. Clark. You can proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, you told us about this trip you took to Costa Rica. Did the FBI ever ask you about that?
No, I definitely would have been willing to tell them though.
Did you ever see the FBI's investigation in process?
Yes, when I went back to work, they were all over the park looking at everything.
Did anything seem strange to you?
Yes. I noticed that there was a younger FBI agent and he was handling some evidence without gloves. I've watched every episode of Law & Order, and I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to do that.
Let's talk
Objection, Your
about.
Honor, lack of foundation as to the last portion of the answer.
May I respond, Your Honor? We're not entering this witness's statement to talk about whether or not FBI agents should use gloves. The jury can come to their own conclusion about that. However, this witness testifying to that shows why she thinks this was strange or unusual and how this relates to the question she was asked.
If I may,
Do you have any follow-up on this, Ms. Davis?
Not at this moment, Your Honor, but later on we'll circle back to another place where the FBI was unthorough with their investigation. It just goes to show another spot where the FBI skipped over some proper procedure.
Okay, here's what we're going to
Okay, Your Honor.
do. I'm going to allow the witness to testify to what she observed. We're not going to admit the witness's opinions about FBI behavior. Okay?
Strike that last portion of the answer from the record.
Yes, the record will magically reflect this court's ruling. You can proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, did you ever interview any park employees about Don Clark's disappearance?
Yes, I talked to a couple of them.
Do you have Exhibit 45 in front of you?
I can get it in front of me. All right, I'm looking at it right now.
What is it?
This is a video I took of Kelsey Stebbins. She's a park employee.
And is it a fair recording of that video?
Yes, this is the exact video I took.
Your Honor, the defense offers Exhibit 45 into evidence.
Any objection
Objection as to hearsay, Your Honor.
to Ms. Stebbins' statements?
Yes, Your Honor.
Can you give the court a preview of what those statements are outside the presence of the jury, of course? Go ahead.
Oh, yes. Are you talking to, would you like me to make a summary?
Ms. Davis, why don't you tell me what you anticipate this is going to, what the jury's going to hear?
Yes, Your Honor. Kelsey Stebbins is about to say that Don Clark came up to her one day and asked her, have you ever thought about just leaving it all behind? No goodbyes, no see you later, just up and leaving in the middle of the night. Now, Ms. Stebbins' testimony, we believe it falls under the residual hearsay exception, Rule 807. Now, there are 4 things necessary to prove this. First of all, the statement must have equivalent circumstantial guarantees of trustworthiness. And we've already established that Ms. Stebbins was an employee at the park that Don Clark owned. And as such, we have circumstantial evidence to suggest that they would have had conversations like this. Second of all, it must be offered as evidence of a material fact. Now, right now it's going towards Don Clark's mindset that he could have been planning to get away, to disappear in the middle of the night. As that is a possible alternate theory to this case, we believe that that is a very material fact. Third, it has to be more probative on the point for which it is offered than any other evidence that can be reasonably procured. Now, as Mr. Clark has been stipulated deceased by the state of Florida, he is unavailable to be called as a witness today. So this is the only evidence we have testifying to his state of mind about possibly leaving everything behind in the middle of the night. Finally, admitting this evidence must best serve the purposes of the rules of evidence. So the purposes of the rules of evidence are to ensure that a just ruling is reached and that the truth is found. And we believe that admitting this evidence will best serve that purpose by giving the jury insight into what Don Clark was thinking.
Mr. Jones?
Yes, Your Honor. The first element that opposing counsel mentioned is the element that we take issue with. There hasn't been sufficient foundation to establish that Kelsey Stebbins and Don Clark, just because they work together, that is not sufficient foundation to establish that they actually had conversations, let alone deep conversations about Don Clark's plans, about what he plans to do in the middle of the night. That sufficient foundation has not been laid up to this point. Therefore, allowing this evidence would be much more prejudicial than probative, and it cannot be allowed into evidence because it is hearsay being offered for the truth of the matter asserted.
So the court has three rulings. First, or 3 parts to its ruling. First, I appreciate the arguments of counsel by both sides. That was phenomenally well argued. Second, I'm inclined to agree with the government that this is probably hearsay. But number 3, the jury wants to hear the video. So in the interest of keeping our jury happy, I'm going to admit the exhibit. Mr. Jones' objection is well noted for appeal and likely to be overturned. But Ms. Davis, you can play Exhibit 45. It's admitted.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Anderson, would you go ahead and play Exhibit 45?
One day, Don came up to me and shook his head. He said, "Have you ever thought about just leaving it all behind? No goodbyes, no see you laters, just up and leaving in the middle of the night?"
Did the FBI ever ask you for this footage?
No, they didn't, but I definitely would have been willing to give it to them.
Did you have any other footage of the elephant park?
Of course. Over the last 3 years, I have over 2,000 hours.
Did they ever ask you for any of that footage?
No, again, I would have given it to them.
Thank you. Nothing further at this time.
You.
Mr. Jones, you can proceed.
May I proceed?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Ms. Young. Can you see and hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Very well.
I want to talk to you about your time working at the Greater Tallahassee Elephant. You were working there about 5 days a week, correct?
That's correct.
Now, in your time there, you had the chance to observe some interactions between Kara and Don Clark.
Of course.
You witnessed some arguments between them.
Of course, just like any other married couple.
Was that a yes?
That's a yes.
Kara, excuse me, you don't have any of these fights on film, do you?
No, that's right.
The defendant asked you to erase any footage of these fights or arguments, right?
That's correct. In my experience working for reality TV, a lot of people don't like embarrassing moments on camera.
That's still a yes. The defendant was the one who asked you to erase that footage.
That's correct.
You do remember one specific incident that happened in July or August of 2017?
That's true.
In this incident, you would say the defendant was angry, right?
Well, she was angry. They were having an argument.
Sorry, the last portion of your answer, Ms. Young.
I just said that they were having an argument.
During this argument, the defendant was so angry, she threw a vase at Don Clark's head, right?
Yes, she did. But just like any other argument, in the end, they made up. They always had some love and respect for each other.
I want to turn your attention to the comments you made about the FBI's investigation.
Sure.
You mentioned on direct examination that you saw some syringes being touched without gloves.
That's correct.
What I didn't hear during your testimony, Ms. Young, was that Agent Branham actually reprimanded these young agents, right?
Well, yes, she did.
So she addressed the problem.
That's correct.
I want to talk to you about the comments you made regarding Costa Rica.
Sure.
You weren't aware of any trips that Don Clark had planned to Costa Rica at the time, were you?
No, I wasn't aware, but he went every couple months.
So that was a no. You weren't aware that any trips he had coming up in the coming weeks.
No, not at the time.
But you did mention taking a trip there yourself.
That's correct.
Mention to us what you found in Don Clark's house.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you very well. Could you repeat that, please?
You mentioned to us some of the things you found in Don Clark's house.
Oh, yes, of course.
I want to clarify, you found no food in the fridge.
That's correct.
You found that the lights were off.
That is true.
You were watching that house for about a week, right?
Yes, about a week.
You found that while you were watching the house, no one entered for that entire week.
That's correct.
You found that no one left throughout that entire week.
Yes, that's correct. However, I did have to go to my hotel at night. I wasn't there 24/7.
All right, you still saw no one leave the building.
Not while I was there, yes.
Going back to August 18th, you talked to Don Clark the last time that day?
Yes, I replay that conversation every single day.
Showing you what's been previously admitted as Exhibit 21. Miss Young, you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
Now, I want to talk to you about who was calling Don Clark after August 18th.
Yes,
Defendant never calls Don Clark after the 18th, right?
that's correct. From what Kara told me, she thought he was going on a trip to Costa Rica, so she wasn't too concerned.
Objection, the last portion of the answer was non-responsive.
Overruled.
Miss Young, the defendant didn't text Don Clark after August the 18th.
No, she didn't.
You also mentioned on direct examination a woman named Lisa Clark.
That's correct.
Lisa Clark, on the other hand, texted Don Clark twice after the 18th.
Yes, that's true. That's what I can see right here.
She called Don Clark after the 18th.
Yes, a couple times.
Specifically, she asked Don Clark, "Why are you avoiding my calls?" You see that?
Yes, I do. She said, "I will kill you in court." I tell you, that woman's made for reality TV.
But the defendant never makes any such statement. "Why are you avoiding my calls?"
No, she didn't text him.
Miss Young, I want to show you what's been previously admitted as Exhibits 10 through 13. 10 through 12, excuse me. Now, you recognize those, Miss Young?
Yes, I do. That's some elephant memorabilia that Miss Bassett had.
You would call it a small part of her collection, wouldn't you?
Oh, yes, she had many, many elephants in her house.
want to show you, you would describe Kara Bassett as passionate when it comes to elephants, right?
Of course. That's what I like most about Kara. We were both very passionate about our jobs.
I'm going to show you what's been previously admitted as Exhibit 38. Or excuse me, I'm going to show you, do you have Exhibit 38 in front of you, Ms. Young?
Yes, I do, right in front of me right now.
Do you recognize that?
Yes, it is.
Is that a video you took of Kara Bassett?
That's correct.
Your Honor, I'm going to mute for 1 second while we play the video.
Objection, Your Honor. Exhibit 38 has not been properly entered into evidence.
People look at me and they think I'm.
Let's pause that. Mr. Jones, I think.
People look at me and they think I'm.
All right. Ms. Davis, I think Mr. Jones was trying to show it silently to authenticate it. Is that right, Mr. Jones? Unfortunately, Mr. Jones is now silent.
Yes, Your Honor, you're correct.
Okay, so let's deal with the authentication issue first. You don't need to have the witness hear it. She's heard it before. She can just tell us if this is, in fact, the real thing. But let's go to whether there's any substantive objections here. Ms. Davis, do you have any substantive objections to 38?
Yes, Your Honor, we believe that this exhibit is more prejudicial than it is probative. In this, Ms. Bassett is speaking in hyperbole about how much she cares about her elephants, and she's speaking to a general idea of how much she endures. And we believe that the defense is going to try to use the statement, "I would take people to their grave for this elephant," specifically to refer to Mr. Clark, which we believe is more prejudicial on this point.
Mr. Jones?
Yes, Your Honor. Exhibit 38, the opposing counsel is correct that those statements will be offered. However, it is highly more probative than it is prejudicial. Our motive in today's case, it is the government's contention that Kara Bassett was so passionate about elephants, so obsessively passionate about elephants, that she was willing to do absolutely anything to come into control of the elephant. Therefore, her motive in this case would be much more probative than it is prejudicial.
May I be heard?
No, I'm going to overrule the objection, both because the court's familiar with the content of the video and does not believe it to be unduly prejudicial, and also for the same reason the ruled on direct examination, the jury absolutely wants to hear the defendant's video. So we're going to admit it for the same reasons. Thank you, both of you, for excellent arguments. You can play the video, Mr. Jones.
People look at me and they think I'm sweet and nice. Go on. Keep underestimating me. I will lobby senators. I will protest big businesses. I will get in your face. I will take people to their grave if I have to. I will do anything to protect these elephants.
Ms. Young.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that very well.
Ms. Young, that video, Kara Bassett's words were, "I will take someone to their grave."
Yes, that's true. Kara can be a bit dramatic over her love for elephants, but at the end of the day, she was quite the protester, quite the activist.
She also said, "I will do anything to protect these elephants."
Yes, she did. She'd lobby senators. She'd go protesting on the streets. Kara was very ambitious.
Ms. Young, do you see Exhibit 44 in front of you?
Just give me a second. I can get it up. I have it in front of me right now.
Is that another video you took of Kara Bassett? Is that another video you took of Kara Bassett?
Oh, yes, that's correct. I didn't hear you the first time.
Ms. Young, excuse me, Your Honor, the people offer Exhibit 44.
Ms. Davis?
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 44 is admitted. You can play it for the jury.
It's Christmas Eve. Don's not here, and I miss him very much. I feel his absence every single day. And it's difficult to find the strength to go on.
Ms. Young, you filmed that video as well?
That's correct.
The defendant is talking about how difficult it is to find the strength to go on without Don Clark, right?
Yes, of course. Don was a light in everybody's life. He was a hilarious, very nice man.
By the end of the video, the defendant is smiling.
Yes, I've talked to Kara about this quite a lot of times. She's always smiling when she's always uncomfortable.
I'm gonna
Yes,
I'm gonna strike that answer as non-responsive. You can re-ask your question.
Ms. Young, the defendant is smiling at the end of this video.
That's correct.
And I think that's the end of your time, Mr. Jones. Thank you very much. Anything further for Ms. Davis?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense does have a redirect.
Go ahead.
Miss Young, you were talking about when you filmed that video that Mr. Jones just showed you. Could you explain the context of that video?
Yes, of course. I know it looks like she might have been being sarcastic, but a problem Kara has is she always smiles when she's uncomfortable or sad. I've talked to her about this many times because it can be easily misconstrued.
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation as to smiling always when she's nervous.
May I be heard?
Yes.
I don't believe that Miss Young is literally trying to say that every single time Kara Bassett is nervous in her entire life, she smiles. However, she is offering it to say that this is a tendency that Miss Bassett has, and that it should be taken into context when viewing this video.
I think your objection is well taken, Mr. Jones. I'm going to let the jury take this for what it's worth. I don't think there's much prejudicial value. The jury can evaluate it. You can proceed.
I think that we're out of time, but just to clarify, her answer is still on the record?
Yes.
Thank you. Nothing further at this time.
Thank you very much. You may step down, Ms. Young.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else from the defense?
No, Your Honor, the defense rests.
Excellent. Mr. Jones, you prepared for closing argument?
Your Honor, may we request like a 2-minute recess?
The rules permit a recess for closings only if there's an emergency. Is there some sort of emergency?
I was just going to use the restroom, but it's okay.
All right. We can do that. Go ahead. 2 minutes. Thanks, everybody. Mr. Jones, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Let me make sure that all of our judges are still present. Can I ask our jurors to just let me know in the chat that they're here, so that way we know everybody's back? Outstanding. Thank you, jurors. Okay. Mr. Jones, you may proceed whenever you're ready.
Choices. On the night of August 18th, the defendant made a choice between her husband and her passion. She chose her passion. She chose to inject her husband with a lethal drug, killing him. She chose to drag his lifeless body into their van and drive to the Big Gum Swamp in Florida where she could dump him. She chose to hike back like nothing happened. Members of the jury, the United States has proven to you beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant didn't have a choice at all. We've proven that to you with 3 key facts: the dirt, the drugs, and the demeanor. First, the dirt. Members of the jury, I told you early on that the defendant was carrying those boots. She was. And on the bottom of those boots, Agent Branham told us there was residue from the Big Gum Swamp, a specific algae mixture. That algae mixture was also found on the driver's side van that Ms. Bassett drove to and from the swamp, because she was the one driving the van. Remember that I asked Agent Branham a specific question. I asked her whether or not there was any forensic evidence other than fingerprints tying Don Clark to the front of the van. She said no, because Don Clark was sitting in the back of the van, lifeless. Secondly, the drug. Members of the jury, you learned that the defendant had access to carfentanil, an elephant tranquilizer that is extremely dangerous when it comes into contact with humans. You learned that the defendant had access to syringes full of 10 milligrams of carfentanil each. What she did on the night of August 18th was she used 10 times the amount necessary to kill an adult human on Don Clark, because she was obsessively passionate about elephants. Agent Branham also told you that the defendant was the last person to access the carfentanil log, and that one syringe was missing and never found. Finally, the demeanor. Members of the jury, you all recall that video. I will do anything to protect these elephants. I will take someone to their grave to protect these elephants. You heard through Agent Branham that the main reason why Kara Bassett and Don Clark fought was because she wanted to be sanctuary, he wanted it to be a business. That disagreement, that central disagreement, drove Kara Bassett to murder Don Clark. After Don Clark disappeared, the defendant didn't call her husband. She didn't text her husband. Why? Because she knew exactly where he was. He was sitting in the swamp, right where she left. Members of the jury, the defense has tried to distract you today. They've given you a couple interesting theories: Costa Rica, different alibis, Lisa Clark. But do you recall how defense counsel ended their opening? They told you don't be fooled. And I'm going to encourage you to do the exact same thing. Don't be fooled by the distractions that defense counsel has raised today. Don Clark didn't go to Costa Rica. Where was his airplane found? Here in America, right at its airplane hangar, right where it always was. Joe Young tried to tell you that she went to Costa Rica and found evidence that Don Clark was actually alive. There was no food in the fridge, no lights on. For an entire week, no one came or left. They told you about Lisa Clark, that she was threatening Don Clark. Members of the jury, Lisa Clark was the actual only person who inquired as to where Don Clark was after the 18th. The defendant did no such thing. What about these alibis that they presented for you? Members of the jury, you heard from Agent Branham that the only relevant person who needed an alibi and didn't provide one was the defendant, Kara Bassett. Don't be fooled by the distractions that defense counsel has put in front of you today. The dirt, the drugs, and the demeanor have proven to you beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant made a choice. Her choice was the elephants over Don Clark. For that reason, I ask that you find the defendant guilty of murder. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel.
Your Honor,
Yes?
request that remaining time be used for rebuttal. My apologies.
That's fine. You don't need to reserve it. It's automatically reserved.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Ms. Davis, you can proceed.
Thank you. Your Honor, members of the jury, you've heard a lot from the prosecution about what a good marriage should look like, what a wife should do if her husband goes missing, how she should text him, how she should conduct herself in interviews. But let's go back. Let's remember what's on your jury verdict sheet. On there, you won't find checkboxes related to, did Kara Bassett text her husband correctly? You won't find a checkbox that said, did Kara Bassett always agree with her husband on everything? Because this case is about murder. It's a serious charge. It's about evidence. It's about whether or not the state has enough to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that Miss Bassett killed Don Clark. Now, they've talked today a lot about how we are trying to throw distractions at you, but members of the jury, remember, they have the highest burden of proof in this country's judicial system. They must prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that Ms. Bassett's guilty. These distractions, they're not distractions, they are reasonable doubt. We told you at the beginning of today that this case would be like a rotten apple, that the prosecution would try to gloss it over with an easy to understand narrative. When you go below the surface, we've seen witnesses uninterviewed, suspects uninvestigated, leads left unfollowed, mishandled evidence. This case has been a mess, inside and out. So as we try to sort through this mess, there are three questions I want you to keep in mind. First, where is Kara? Second, where is Lisa? Where is Dawn? So first, where is Kara? Well, this is the question that we actually know the answer to. Kara told the police and the FBI that she was at the Greater Tallahassee Elephant Park the night that Don Clark disappeared, and that's exactly what the evidence shows. The prosecution tried to bring in some mud tests that could tie her to the Big Gum Swamp, but remember, they never collected any control samples. They never tested any of the mud at the elephant park that Miss Bassett would have been walking around in every day. They don't know. When Miss Bassett told them that Don Clark texted her saying that he was going out for a while, they found that text on her phone. When she told them that Don Clark's phone, wallet, and keys were missing, sure enough, when they searched, the phone, the wallet, the keys were all missing. Miss Bassett's story is the only one that lines up with the evidence. So let's move on to the second question. Where is Lisa? The simple answer is we don't know. The FBI was never able to find an alibi for her, and she's not the only one. You heard today that they never got an alibi for Phil Clark, Don Clark's son. They never got an alibi from Nate Garson, even though he had access to the carfentanil that they seem to think is so important in today's case. That's a lot of holes. But the biggest hole, as far as alibis go, Lisa Clark. Because not only did she refuse to cooperate with the investigation, her only words to police were, that blank Don Clark deserved to die. Joe Young told you, she said, I will wipe you off the face of the earth, straight to the victim's face. But no alibi. That's reasonable doubt. Finally, the biggest question in today's case, where is Don Clark? The prosecution wants you to believe that he's at the bottom of the Big Gum Swamp, but they can't prove that. They told you, they brought out sniffer dogs, and those dogs found nothing, no scent, no evidence that Don Clark was there. They told you that there is evidence that Don Clark went to Costa Rica. There's evidence that he was planning to invest money there. There is evidence that Don Clark was talking to an unknown number from Costa Rica just hours before his disappearance. Texts, phone calls. The FBI, they never set a single foot inside Costa Rica. They never went to Don Clark's home. They never asked anyone if they'd seen him. They never even asked Miss Young when she went and tried to help along with the investigation. They never asked for the footage of Kelsey Stebbins talking about how Mr. Clark was thinking about running away. They never asked for the 2,000 hours of footage that Miss Young had on file. Where is the body? The FBI doesn't have a body in this case. They don't have an autopsy. They can't determine a manner of death. They can't say that carfentanil was the murder weapon because they don't have a body that they can run carfentanil tests on. A murder trial where they can't prove that the alleged victim is even dead, that is reasonable doubt. And you've heard about choices today. Well, I want to tell you about another choice. It's the choice that Agent Brandon had. It's the choice that the state had today bringing this case. It's a choice of whether to take the easy answer or to really dig deep, to look at what the actual evidence says, to follow every lead and be sure before you accuse someone of murder. They chose the easy answer. They chose the simple narrative, the one that would be most palatable. They can't back that up because the real evidence raises real questions. Was Lisa Clark involved? Was the unknown number from Costa Rica involved? Did Don Clark leave of his own free will? Is Don Clark still alive today? Miss Bassett is innocent. That's why this case doesn't work. That's why the real evidence raises so many questions. That's why we're going to ask you to find her not guilty. Thank you.
Mr. Jones, rebuttal. And before he begins, I'll ask our timekeepers how much time remains for rebuttal. Can you put that in the chat, please? Timekeepers, how much time remains for rebuttal?
Josiah has 1 minute and 50 seconds left for rebuttal.
Okay, you can proceed. Thank you.
Well, let's talk about Costa Rica. You haven't heard any evidence that Don Clark went to Costa Rica. His airplane was in the same place it was for 2 weeks. Let's talk about Lisa Clark in comparison with the defendant. Lisa Clark calls him. She texts him. She asks why he's avoiding her calls. She doesn't know where Don Clark is. The defense is trying to tell you that Lisa Clark is some elaborate mastermind who's going to text Don Clark's phone, call Don Clark wondering where he is. That's not supported by the evidence. The defendant doesn't call Don Clark. She doesn't text Don Clark. She doesn't try to contact Don Clark. She doesn't go looking for Don Clark. She knows where he is. Members of the jury, like I told you, the defense has presented you with a lot of distractions. The dirt, the drugs, and the demeanor. The defendant had a rare, special type of mixture of dirt, algae on the bottom of her boots that was only found at the Big Gum Swamp. The defendant had access and was the last person to access the carfentanil log just before Don Clark disappeared. The defendant smiles when she's talking about how hard it is to live life without Don Clark. Members of the jury, Kara Bassett is the only person who you should be concerned about and concerned about finding an alibi for it. You won't find one because she was at the Big Gum Swamp dumping Don Clark's body, trying to gain control of her elephant. She made a choice. Her husband, her elephants. And unfortunately, the elephants won out. Find her guilty. Thank you.
I'll ask our jurors to submit their ballots. Once they're all submitted, we'll do some feedback for our competitors. All right, can we get our jurors to jump on screen with us, please? And our witnesses as well. So I'm going to turn it over to our jurors to introduce themselves and provide some comments. Before you do, I'm going to actually jump off the breakout room so that way I can make sure things are running smoothly in other rounds. So I'll just briefly say, I thought you were extraordinary. This is the first round I got to judge this weekend. I kept hearing from everybody, I can't believe these are high school students. I know the joke in mock trial is you always hear from judges, you're better than some of the real lawyers I see every day. But this weekend I had real lawyers saying, I actually don't think that real lawyers could handle the Zoom format and be able to display exhibits and use exhibits the way that you all have. And a lot of that is experience. You gave yourself experience doing this. You practiced extraordinarily well. I'll just give a quick comment to each of you before I jump off, and I apologize to our jurors. I'd normally have you go first, but I want to make sure the tournament's running. Mr. Jones, you have incredible presence, but I was even more impressed, I think, with your responsiveness during trial. There are several moments where you were clearly responding and incorporating and adapting very nicely. Ms. Davis, your objections were great. I could tell that some of those you'd really planned exactly what you were going to say, but other times it was clear that you were reacting in the moment, and your ability to be articulate, to be poised, to know the evidence code, particularly when you said, there's two reasons why we're offering this. One's motive, and the other is the effect of the investigation. You just didn't miss a beat. To our witnesses, it's Ms. Bays as our prosecution witness. I thought that you were extraordinarily credible on cross-examination. You managed to convey your argument with the questions, or your disagreement with the questions, without actually disagreeing. So it allowed you to undermine some of the cross without being non-responsive. And Carmela, I thought that you were dynamic as a witness and a lot of fun. You stayed in character, and you're both a pleasure to watch on the stand. So thanks for a great trial. I'll turn it over to our jurors to introduce themselves and give some feedback. Jurors, thank you so much for judging. I hope you enjoyed the trial as much as I did. Okay, let me stop the recording.